All right, Kendra, you said that sign says you're live.
All right.
Yes, we are live. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth to you as well.
We're glad to have you here. We're excited. We want to learn from you. We want to learn more about this special holiday, and we want to learn more from you on, the impact of this holiday and of your work on Black equity in healthcare. So I'm going to
Yeah.
turn it over to you, Kendra, to introduce yourself. You have a lot going on. Introduce
Yeah.
yourself to our audience.
All right. Well, my name is Kendra Phillips. I am a consultant, project manager, grant writer for Phillips Consulting Firm. I write on social determinants of health, health equity, and um, rural South of America. Something I really enjoy is writing, especially these pieces on inclusion and diversity in rural America. So that's what I'm up to. I'm also a practice administrator for 18 years in primary care in Arkansas. So yeah, that's what I'm up to.
You mentioned rural, and I want to get to that because at Cancer Equity Project, we're talking about health equity, and it's not just a black and white issue.
Right.
We know it's also an economics issue. And you mentioned rural, and my partner just sent me an article out of I think it's out of the University of Kentucky, about the Appalachian, and how the death rate there is so much higher
Hmm.
than the national, than the national average. And so rural, I know there's a special stuff going on there. It's again not just a black and white issue.
Right. Right. Right.
But today is Juneteenth, and I know I think this might be the first or the second official year of it being a federal holiday. I'm not sure if it was the first or the second,
Second
but
year.
is it first year?
The second year.
Second year. Okay. Can you just educate us a little bit as to what is this holiday all about? Because I don't think, even though we hear it in the media, what is it really? What is it really?
So, going back, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 to free slaves from enslavement. A lot of people in the South didn't get that message until 1865 in Galveston, Texas, when the general came and delivered it and said, "You guys have been free for 2 years, 2.5 years." And that was on June 19th, 1865.
Mm,
Like, so wow. So half of the the United States has been free and they knew it in the North, but the South didn't get that message until 2.5 years later. A lot of people in the South have been celebrating this holiday for many, many years,
oh,
in addition to July 4th. But a lot of people now, they're like, okay, this is really a thing. This is really when it happened. They couldn't believe it. So that's when it started. A lady by Miss, I always forget her last name, but her first name is Miss Opal. She was from from Texas. She actually walked from Texas to Washington D.C. to have this day known as a federal holiday.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
President
Wow.
Biden signed it into law in 2021, and now it's a federal holiday all over the United States.
Wow, that's commitment.
Yeah,
That is commitment. And it just shows you the power of determination. So,
right, right.
in your opinion, Kendra, and I know you work in the health space, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but as we're in the spirit of Juneteenth and how far we've come, what are your thoughts on how far we have come, and what do you think is left to be done, and who do you think is responsible? I'm just kind of want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I feel like we've come far, but we still have so far to come, especially when it comes to health equity, education, and politics in general. A lot of people, we're still just catching up, especially on the literacy part of it. Literacy has always become an issue in the South when it comes to education and access. A lot of other people have access to resources to educate their communities. But when we talk about resources in the South, it's still so small and so little in between of what we have available. Especially when a lot of our teachers are underpaid, our staff is underpaid, and we have deserts in certain areas. So there's a lot of things that are happening in legislation to make equity more of, but if those things aren't put into place all over, same thing as Juneteenth, 2.5 years behind,
Mm-hmm.
still will be playing this catch up game.
Okay, so you think the South is lagging, is what you're saying. You believe that the South is
Lagging.
lagging in that progress.
In some ways we are lagging a little bit behind, not in all areas, but we have to show up, advocate for our communities, understand the needs of our communities, and where we can add to, and speak up for the people that don't know. A lot of people go without health care, um, getting their treatments done because they just fear going to see their doctor. They feel like their doctors don't understand them. There's nothing that they have in common, but this is the only doctor in my neighborhood that can see me. Because there's
Mm-hmm.
no other access to care. No other doctors or practitioners in their area. They're far and few between now. A lot of those doctors in rural communities are actually moving to more urban communities and leaving behind a lot of the healthcare spaces in
Wow,
rural. And those people are having to travel to see advanced care doctors.
that's a sad state because not only do we have the poverty, now we have
Mhm.
lack of access, reduced access, and this is in the poor and the rural communities. Now, are these because I know you work in the rural communities, are these communities mixed race? I mean, what's the demographics there?
Yeah, so the communities I work in are usually 65% minority, 30% white or of another nationality, but most of them are minority communities that we work in.
Okay, so yeah, so you're seeing, and it's the same issue. Doesn't matter what their color is, right? If they're in rural, they're still having less access to care. I mean, what you're in Arkansas, right? And I know we talked about, we were in Memphis this
Mhm.
past weekend, just really educating doctors with our Seek workshop on
Right.
the state of affairs and the importance of equity and equitable treatment, and what is it, and having them to become more conscious of what their patients or potential patients are experiencing. And you mentioned literacy, and there's literacy on the part of the patient, but there's also literacy on the part of the clinicians too. And so we're trying to attack it from both sides, like you know training the clinicians on what it is to give equitable care, right? Exposing them to the social determinants of health that the community faces. At the same time, there's a true literacy problem in rural communities.
There is.
So they are not an educated patient. So their outcomes are so much worse
Mhm.
because of all these factors. No, in your neck of the woods, right? What is being done that you
So
can point to and say, here's some progress?
yeah, so a lot of doctors, because we do work with a more of an aged population of doctors. Some of these are more seasoned doctors. They've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
So you have to retrain the clinician on how they approach their patients with understanding their health outcomes and or their health care in general. So being able to give out and spend more time with your patient so they understand what's going on and how to treat their diagnosis that's in front of them. And with that, we are also going to a lot of infographics in healthcare with
Hmm.
pictures so they can actually see how it works, how this system affects this, and what you need to do to attack what's going on in your body.
Hmm.
But it's hard. because we're talking about an educated population of clinicians that have their degrees and have everything they need to treat the patient. But all patients aren't treated the same. We
Right.
can't look at it as a one sword lens. We have to look at it as a huge picture, right? How
Mhm.
you can't attack it from one way. We have to look at it as a different framework of how we can holistically look at this and
Right.
treat all patients from where they are currently.
Wh- A lot of, a lot of healthcare is moving to tech.
Yeah.
Okay, we know about AI, and we're seeing some advances there, and people, there's mixed feelings about AI, but here's the truth. Whether you have mixed feelings or not, it's here to stay. And as you're talking, we're developing this, what we call a compass journey map, right? Which is it's going to be housed on the internet, whether it's in an app or it's on your desktop, where a patient is diagnosed with a particular type of cancer. You start here on our map, and you're guided through all the different things that are coming, and also the potential challenges. But as you're talking about rural America, right, I'm thinking they don't have computers. I mean, it's really, it really reinforces again that they're going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 years behind,
Right.
years, maybe 10 years, if something doesn't happen. Now, I know you said you were in DC recently talking to some Congress people. What was your message?
So a lot of our message was around tech. So we
Hmm.
did have a piece around broadband, which the states are starting to roll out broadband, getting people set up with that fiber in their homes in more rural parts of Arkansas. So Arkansas, I think it is starting to do a better job of doing broadband all over the state. The money is there. It's just finding the contractors to set up the broadband in these most rural communities. A lot of other parts of the South are still struggling with finding the money to set up broadband in their communities. Once we set them up with broadband, a lot of communities have a small discount on their internet. So they'll get their internet at a reduced cost for them. So they'll be able to connect their computers or their iPhones or whatever to be able to get access to the internet.
Yeah,
So that was one big thing. A lot of the states that I work with that have rural communities, everyone advocated almost for the same things. It was access to healthcare, broadband,
yeah,
food pantries, agriculture, and transportation, which is all social determinants of health.
that is so
Yeah.
true. I'm glad you're doing it. And I'll say, since you're a community leader and you're doing all these things in the community, I would say, one of the things that's really needed too, as as we get the broadband, is we need that computer training, because I know that Silicon Valley, I know people like Microsoft, they will donate equipment. I've seen that happen. They will donate equipment to get people caught up, for that digital divide. They will donate. It just requires that leadership in the community, to state what the needs are, because the resources are around. So I'm
Mhm.
glad what you're doing, going up to DC, advocating for your folks. When we talked earlier, you mentioned that you saw a little bit of progress in terms of how doctors relate to patients in Arkansas. And you mentioned something very interesting to me. Do you mind sharing that? Like, why you thought this was changing?
Yeah, so I think doctors want to have a better understanding of their patients. They want to know their background. They want to get the message across to them. So they're taking this advanced training on equity and diversity, equity, inclusion to make sure that they're not missing anything in their healthcare
Mhm.
outcomes for their patients. And I applaud them for that. Most doctors want to do the right thing. They want to make sure that they're not taking a one way approach when they address their patients' needs and their determinants, right? So they're taking those additional continuing education courses on diversity and inclusion. They're making sure that they spend the extra time with their patients and they understand their background. To tell you the truth, in rural America, the first place that most people go for any type of care is the doctor.
Right.
They don't go anywhere else. That they trust their doctor for everything. That's my doctor. Whatever she said is, or he says is the truth. If I need anything, I'm going to my doctor. So with this new rollout of health equity and diversity, equity, inclusion, and social determinants of health, and all these different things, there's different metrics that we can use to screen our patients to make sure that we're taking a holistic approach and make sure that the patient's whole health care is addressed, that they have transportation to and from the doctor's office, that they actually have food at home to treat their diabetes, because
Mm,
diabetes is not only treated with medications, it's treated with our foods that we eat.
yeah.
And we're actually getting them the resources that they need to make sure that they live a long life, a long and safe life. So a lot of doctors are now, the ones that I've talked to, they're requiring the patients to come back more often than the
Wow.
6 month visit, the 6 month or 1 year visit in these smaller communities to make sure that those things are being addressed. And I applaud them for that.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear. I mean, that is really good. That is really progress in these. That's really good. I mean, we got to talk off camera because, I think some of your doctors, in your community there would be really good candidates for our Seek workshop because they're already doing it, and,
Right.
and maybe a couple of them could even speak as to the success that they're having. So we gotta exchange some information on that because that's a shift that I never thought of, right? Rather than the 6 month follow up or the 1 year follow up, these doctors in the rural communities that you're seeing are getting more granular and saying,
Mhm.
come back earlier so we can keep tabs on these determinants that will affect your outcome. That's really awesome, really awesome. In a few couple of seconds, minutes that we have left, tell us about your grant writing because I know you do that too for nonprofits. Because that's kind of how you and I connected is on a grant consulting call. So tell us about that a little bit.
So I've been in charge for the last couple of years on social determinants of health and health equity and health disparities in the rural communities. So I wrote a piece on social determinants of health for Crittenden County, which is where I'm located in Arkansas. And for a whole year, I researched determining factors that affect health in our communities. And most of those were transportation, food
Mhm.
deserts, and education. How can we make sure that people that live here are treated correctly and they have access to care when they need it and they have a way to get back and forth to the doctor. So we put different measures in place and wrote that piece to the CDC and did that. So another one that I'm currently writing on is access in rural communities in Mississippi County. How can we keep up with the upkeep of beautification projects and walking paths in that part of the state? So it's something I really enjoy, making sure that people have what they need to live
Mhm.
a long and healthy life.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that in your profile that's your mission in life.
Yeah.
You're also interested a lot. I see in the literacy piece. Educating the community because education doesn't have to be formal education, but just being more aware, being more in tune, it just affects so many things, right? Just affects, just has a significant impact on how your life really turns out. Kendra, we like to end our show with something that we call that's upbeat because our show is called T Talks, and it's because of the T cells in our bodies are the cells that fight cancer.
Mhm.
So I want you to leave us with something uplifting. It could be about Juneteenth, or it could be about the health equity, or it's whatever you feel like you would have your final word to the audience. What would that be?
Maybe my final words would be make sure with everything that you do as you grow, you pull someone with you. You have somebody else, because not everybody is in the place that you are right now.
Yeah.
It took a lot for us to get to where we are, and we have to make sure that we reach back and pull someone with us. And that's not actually bringing them up to that same level, but making sure we sit down and take the time to listen to these people in these communities, understand their challenges, where they come from, and whatever you have to add, if you have a resource to add, or where they can go to get additional help, share those resources. Don't hoard the information for yourself, and what they can do to make their life better. So with that, yeah, that would be my final thoughts. Make sure you reach back and help your brother or your sister.
What you said reminded me of a definition that someone gave about equity, which I loved. And pretty much what you're describing there, Kendra, is practicing equity. All
Yeah.
of us can practice equity. Whether it's equity in the gay community,
Hmm.
LGBTQ, the rural community, Appalachian community, African American community, Hispanic community. Who can we look to the right and to the left to help and bring up so that
Yeah.
they can have an equal chance as well, equitable
Absolutely.
chance? So,
Absolutely.
so that's
Right.
a good
Our
part.
daily lives.
Yep, I love it because it's not putting equity only in the hands of doctors or whatever. It's putting
Mhm.
equity in all our hands because we
No,
all
yeah,
can do something.
absolutely. We all can do something.
I can do something. Kendra, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
on
so
our
much.
show. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I know we have work to do together,
You
and
did.
we do because we have to make a dent in this world. Okay.
Oh, yes.
So for those of you who are watching on the replay, we just want to just thank you for watching on the replay. We're gonna link Kendra's LinkedIn there. If you have any questions for Kendra, feel free to follow up with her directly. Take care.